Pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Item 2 on tonight's agenda is patrons' comments. Being that some people are just walking in, any individuals from the public that were wishing to speak on an educational item tonight? No? Okay. With that being said, we'll move on to item 3, our consent agenda. Dr. Terrell?
For your consideration this evening, we have 3.01, which is the minutes of our meetings, 3.02,
Any issues, questions, discussion at this time? Mr. Akiwa.
What I was asking, are we short anywhere in the corporation on personnel?
Thank you, Mr. Vassar. I think at this time, we might still be short some personnel in one particular area that we've really been working on, and I'm almost going to comment on that later, but I'll kind of touch on it now, is transportation. You know, we're still looking to bolster our drivers, and not just drivers, but subs. And there's a couple of other unique areas. We want to bring in some more substitute nurses as well. And also make sure that we have enough paraprofessionals predominantly in the exceptional learners department.
Did I hear correctly this morning, though, that some retired drivers are coming back to sub?
Yes, stealing my thunder for later, but yes, sir,
Oh.
you did hear that correctly, Mr. Vassar.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions at this time? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries 4-0. Tonight's fourth action item, bank reconciliation adjustment, 4.01. Mr. Reese?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Our bank reconciliations have been off by a smaller dollar amount here for most of 2022. State Board of Accounts requires board approval to essentially write off that dollar amount. So with that, with the change in the CFO position in December and starting the new year, we're requesting a bank reconciliation adjustment for $61.26 to become balanced again at the end of January of 2023.
You've heard the recommendation of the administration to approve an adjustment of $61.26 to balance our bank reconciliations. May I have a motion?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Vassar, seconded by Mr. Smith. Questions or discussion? All those in favor, please. Oh, did you have?
I'm sorry, Just one, so I understand. Over the course of the whole year with all the money coming in and out, we're off by $61 and some change.
That's correct. Our expenses and revenues were around 109 to 107 million in 2022.
So that's pretty good, I would think.
Well, I appreciate your comment. Unfortunately, we don't like being off by anything.
Right.
So this is the first time I've had to do this in 26 years, so I'm not terribly excited about this agenda item.
And that was your point for indicating the switch in positions. You think you'll correct and fix that next year?
I want to make sure we're starting off fresh, both for myself as treasurer and then the deputy treasurer who was treasurer last year, get that just back to being how it's supposed to be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just being in the finance background way back in the day, a penny, it seems like $5,000 at that point. So I understand that.
At some point, you spend more time trying to get it reconciled than it's worth, but our goal is always to get back to zero every month.
Any other questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries 4-0. Item 4.02, purchase audio and security equipment. Mr. Reese?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. The next 4 agenda items are all regarding the construction that's going on currently in the opening of school for the fall of 2023. All these items we're asking for your approval on, not with this one motion, but I'm just giving you a heads up what's coming with all 4 of the agenda items. Some of it's some lead time. We want to make sure we get items in so we're ready to go in August with these. Obviously, with some of the supply chain issues we've been facing, we just want to do everything we can to make sure we're ahead of schedule. So with that tonight, this first one, we're approving a bid for audio and security systems for the new middle school, Wheeler Middle School, Eisenhower, MacArthur, Timothy Ball, and the new administration building. With that, there is contract number 1 to Tri Electronics for $452,637. Contract 2 to Tri Electronics for $358,512. The auditorium sound and contract number 3 for Tri Electronics for $337,616. Contract 5 is ATN Technologies. It's a partial award for the new middle school at $95,549. And then contract 6 is for Tri Electronics, also a partial award for the new middle school in the admin building. And those partial awards are simply because we want to make sure both of those new buildings have a system up and running in August. And that amounts $209,900 for a total for these initial contracts of $1,454,214. We'll bring back the other options once we finalize reviewing them and going through them.
You've heard the recommendation from the administration for the approval of our audio and security equipment for Eisenhower Elementary and MacArthur Elementary and Timothy Ball and the new middle school for amount of $452,637. The contract 2 integrated audio systems for a total of $358,512. The new middle school and Wheeler Middle School in the amount of $337,616. The admin center, high school, new middle school, Wheeler Middle School, Eisenhower Elementary, MacArthur Elementary, and Timothy Ball Elementary in the amount of $95,549. And surveillance video system at the admin center, high school, new middle school, Wheeler Middle School, Eisenhower Elementary, MacArthur Elementary, and Timothy Ball in the amount of $209,900 for a total of these contracts of $1,454,214. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Ms. Bazin. Questions or discussion?
Mr. Reese, I'm familiar with Tri Electronics as a vendor, as we've done business with them before. ATN Technologies, have we had a past relationship with them as well?
Mr. Gill?
Yes, we have. They're primarily our vendor for first control systems. Things like that.
Great, thank you.
What about the old equipment? Tri Electronics also put a lot of that in. Are they taking any of that back, do you know of?
I'm not sure exactly what they're doing. A lot of what you're approving tonight is the equipment that's new for the new buildings. So there's not much of the old equipment, I don't believe, in these contracts.
Okay, and then cameras, particularly for new buildings. Are the outside cameras, do you know if those are color cameras or black and white? Because I know Colonel Wheeler, the mistake was made to make those outside cameras color.
All of our cameras are colored.
How's that picking up then, Mr. Gill, outside in the darkness? Doesn't that?
All the cameras are outfitted with IR technology.
Okay, and how's that different from the cameras that were initially installed? Colonel Wheeler in particular, I know that firsthand.
These have been replaced. We replaced them maybe 3-4 years ago.
Okay,
We moved away from that old coax style cameras to IP-based cameras.
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 4-0. 4.0 through 4.03, Crown Point High School Weight Room Equipment Project. Mr. Reese?
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, we accepted bids for the high school new weight room equipment that's going into the addition of the new field house there on the southwest corner of the building. With that, Direct Fitness was the low bidder at $302,885, and we're recommending approval of that contract.
You've heard the recommendation from the administration for the approval of the contract for the weight room project with Direct Fitness Solutions in the amount of $302,885. May I have a motion?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Basin, second by Mr. Vassar. Question or discussion?
Again, this is new equipment. And this is for classroom use as well as athletics use?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries 4-0. 4.04, Taft Middle School Water Main Extension Project. Mr. Reese.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, this will take a little bit more explanation. So with this, we need to provide water service to the new Taft Middle School. With that, we require a 12-inch pipe to come in to the building for our purposes and the water pipe being run. However, the American Water, who is going to be providing that water to the new Taft Middle School, is requiring a 20-inch pipe coming in. So the way to identify what the additional cost was going from the 12-inch pipe to the 20-inch pipe was to set aside an alternate for a 20-inch pipe and do the base bid at 12 inches. With that, the base bid for this came in at $1,337,045. The additional markup for the 20-inch pipe is $774,479. While the contract you'll approve is for the $2,151,524 for the 20-inch pipe, we'll be seeking reimbursement from American Water for that difference between the 12-inch pipe to the 20-inch pipe. So that's why American Water then will reimburse us that $774,479. Our budget for this project was $1.5 million, and with that, our net cost to the district is the $1,337,045, which is underneath the budget. And with that, we're recommending the contract to Austin Equipment for $2,151,524 for the new water pipe to New Taft.
You've heard the recommendation from the administration for the approval of the contract for the new water main project at the new Taft Middle School to Austin Equipment in the amount of $2,151,524. $2,151,524. May I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Ms. Basin. Question or discussion?
This is probably a bad idea to assume anything, but is the town want the 20-inch or the American Water Company for future growth in the area? Is that, it's all about growth?
That's correct.
Okay.
Those landowners that might sell that property just south of the high school would probably love that, so. With that being said, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries 4-0. 4.05, purchase for Jerry Ross Winfield Furniture. Mr. Reese.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. We have been working with Sharp School Services as they provided the furniture for when the Winfield renovation took place back in 2020. As we split those two buildings, or split them up from being K2 and 3 through 5, we need some furniture that's more appropriate for the sizes in each of those buildings as we split that up. So we need to add some additional furniture at those two sites. So with that, we're asking for approval from Sharp School Services in the amount of $416.75 for the new furniture for Jerry Ross and Winfield.
You heard the recommendation from the administration for approval of furniture for Jerry Ross and Winfield from Sharp School Services in the amount of $125,824.25 for Winfield and $290,792.50 for Jerry Ross, for a total of $416,616.75. May I have a motion?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Basin, second by Mr. Smith. Question or discussion?
This includes student desks as well as teacher desks, or this is
Yes.
just for students?
No, both students and teachers.
And this also included, Ms. Pascas, any special education needs in there as well? Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you for your help on all those, Mr. Reese. Moving on to 5 information recognition items. 5.01 Superintendent's Discussion Groups, which covers our connections in Winfield, Cedar Lake, and with the city. Mr. Smith, anything to report?
Had the first meeting at the redevelopment commission for Crown Point. It went well. They obviously recognized Mr. Hoffman for all the years of service he had there, and a lot of very kind words spoken about him. So they had a presentation about media and the budget for the media. So that's about the extent I got from Crown Point. They indicated they have a great working relationship with Brooke, and they're grateful to have Brooke here, and that the city and the school corporation are working well together in that sense. So that's about it from Crown Point. I did not have an opportunity to review Cedar Lake this month, and no news on that end.
Okay, and just to touch base on Winfield, I did speak with the former president, Mr. Steiner, and he was in contact with the new board, and just, they have not reached out to any of us yet on the board to appoint the Winfield rep moving forward. So I'll try to do some follow-up on that, just to make sure we're in the loop on what's gonna move forward. With that, item 5.02, Director of Elementary Education, Ms. Ramirez?
Thank you, Mr. President and board members. I would just like to take this opportunity, as we have focused some of the board reports on the elementary end, on the amount of work we've been doing to align our curriculum at the elementary level over the course of the past 2 years, along with professional development to support our teachers. All of that then will support a common academic experience for our students. We've also been working on the flip side on extracurricular opportunities for our students, and I really do feel that it is quite a vibrant experience that our elementary students get to participate in because of really our sponsors that we have in a variety of positions. I'd like to talk about most recently at Timothy Ball, they had their National Elementary Honor Society, in which we have a total of 57 students, 4th and 5th graders, and that ceremony took place last week. It was really a great opportunity to bring the families in and to listen to the students demonstrate characters of citizenship at such a young age. We also have a thriving Best Buddies program throughout our buildings, and at MacArthur most recently, they met last week and we're doing cards for kids, and then they send cards to children's hospitals throughout Indiana, and it's a really great opportunity for all students to be able to participate and to get to know each other. Another thing that I think is really important to see at our elementaries are the exploratory clubs that really are driven by the interests of our students. We have new this year a chess club that started out at MacArthur based on student interest in playing chess, and we have 2 sponsors doing that. And again, I think this goes back to that partnership and the dedication of our teachers and staff members wanting to see students develop and be exposed to a wide variety of opportunities. We have an exploratory Lego club at Timothy Ball, which again just goes to showing kind of the scope of what is able to be done at the elementaries. Lastly, I'd like to thank Lake Street's PTO. They sponsored a STEAM night, which was a virtual opportunity for families. It was open to everybody to partner with Go To Science, and they got to learn about manatees down in Florida. That took place last Friday and was really a great opportunity to kind of extend learning into the home. The families received a kit. Again, the sponsor, who is a teacher, provided these kits, and then they did some kind of problem solving while they were on the Zoom. Teachers were leading the breakout rooms, so I just really encourage all of you to check out the school's social media pages, because they really do a great job of highlighting images of what's going on, as well as they give you kind of the key happenings, if you will, in their newsletters. So if you have any other questions about that, by all means, feel free to reach out to Buildings or to me. But I just want to thank all who are involved for the opportunities that they create for our students.
Thank you. Director of Secondary Education, Mr. Gianfermi?
Thank you, Mr. President, board members. I think we'll stay with the theme of extracurriculars and co-curriculars, things that are happening with our secondary schools. Start off with robotics. This past Saturday, if you would have went by Crown Point High School, you would have run into a VEX robotics tournament with 67 teams, and the second largest tournament in the state, I'm told. Of course, our Crown Point teams came on top of that particular tournament, which we're very proud of. The whole program, the middle schools have really taken off as well. Colonel Wheeler always hosts a tournament, and Taft Middle School this year hosted their first tournament, and they are on they're well on their way to qualifying for state. And we know if this starts happening from state to world, we're sending them off to all kind of places. So very proud of them, and we'll be hearing more about them as the year moves on. I wanted to highlight the chess club. We've always had a chess club at Crown Point High School for quite a few years now, but now they've really raised it, and now it's a competitive chess club. They just participated in the Scholastic Chess of Indiana Regional Tournament. 35 students were participating. Out of that, we had 8 state tournament qualifiers, and only one student was undefeated, and that was Tyler Hudak of Crown Point High School. So we're very proud of him and everyone that participated there. And thanks to Mrs. Rayloff for taking that club kind of the next step. So that's really kind of neat. Our music department had a really neat opportunity. Mr. Zmelko, his first year as the maestro of our orchestra at Crown Point High School. He took the kids, the chamber orchestra, to the orchestra hall in Chicago. And when the symphony was playing that night at intermission, our kids got to have their own little concert for everybody that was there that night. So really cool opportunity for them. And then finally, let me just say this. It's that time of year. We're already starting to think about the class of 2027 and entering the high school. So this Thursday night, we'll be having our 8th grade parents coming in for a little orientation time. This year, they're going to let the students, if they wish to come in as well. We have a pretty strong mentor program that's going on at the high school right now, so they can take some tours while their parents hear all the exciting things that happen when you start to become a Crown Point High School student. So ready for that. And just a little side note, this Friday night, basketball game's at home, and we'll be honoring the 1998 boys regional basketball champions, and Mr. Akiwa was a coach for that team, so he'll be there as well. So kind of a lot of neat things going on. We could go on forever and ever, but I promise these guys I'll stop and so any questions or anything?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director of Exceptional Education, Ms. Vasquez.
Good evening, Mr. President and members of the board. I have a flyer I'm going to hand out to each of you. Our Exceptional Learners basketball team at the high school starts their season this week. So their first game is Thursday, and the schedule is here on the flyer. I will share that out. We have our cheerleaders and our players, and it's just really an awesome time. So if you can come, we'd love to have you. Wanted to provide an update. Each December 1st, we are required to count all of our students with IEPs, and that count is used for what's called our adjusted pupil count. It helps us generate some more money to help educate our students with exceptional needs. So this year, our count compared to last year was up 95 students, which we were feeling it, so we're glad it showed there on paper. So we're up to 1,371 students that have IEPs here in Crown Point. One other program I wanted to highlight, at the high school, we have Santier Bank coming into one of our applied skills classrooms, and one of the gentlemen from Santier comes in once a week and co-teaches with one of our teachers. They practice how to write checks, make deposits, and then they've even taken a field trip over to Santier's training center and practice those same skills. So we're thankful for that relationship with Santier Bank.
Ms. Vasquez, what was the jump the previous year? Do you know offhand from?
I could look. I don't know off the top of my head. It'll take me a minute.
Oh, but I mean, if you had to guess, by 95 this year would have been around 50?
It was much less, yeah.
Oh, okay, that's all. I'm good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, what was the greatest increase disability?
I think developmental disability has really expanded. I think given COVID, a lot of our preschoolers did not partake in early intervention services through First Steps. So we found that a lot of families kept those children home and then kind of came out of the woodwork as people started returning in person. And then we always experience an uptick in those mild disability areas of specific learning disability and other health impairment, but nothing out of the kind of national and state averages. We're pretty much in line with that pattern.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one quick question. So I did my super quick math, like about a 7% increase in IEPs. How did that, if you know, line up with our increase in enrollment? Like, did that have any correlation to just our overall enrollment increase? I'm not aware of the difference in increase, nothing to do with that.
The other area we have really increased in is speech. Over the last 3 years, we have really shown an increase in speech services.
But not students on the spectrum?
No.
All good? Next, 5.05, Chief Academic Officer, Mr. Hardman.
Thank you, Mr. Angel, members of the board. I have 3 items I just want to comment on tonight. As you probably are aware of, next Wednesday we have our 3rd e-learning day, and that is a day that our students will be doing asynchronous learning, meaning that the teachers prepare the learning activities for the students. And at the elementary school, there is a set time, about 30 minutes just in the morning for our teachers and students to connect so that they understand what the activities are and what the expectations are. Middle and high school, throughout the day, are monitoring either by email or within the learning management system any questions or things that are happening with their students and are able to meet their needs. While the students are at home interacting with their activities, we have a number of things that are taking place in the school district as far as professional development. Starting at the high school level, they will be working on their Tier 1 instruction. And when I say Tier 1, and when you hear that term, we're talking about what happens in the core curriculum, what happens in the classroom. And there are, we call them professional learning communities, which are members of the staff that teach the same course, and they meet together and they're looking at their instruction and the lessons that are coming up, and to honing those and keeping those in a position that's going to help our students maximize their learning. Also at the middle level, we have Dr. Van Acker coming to the middle schools, and he's going to provide a workshop, one in the morning, one in the afternoon for our middle schools. And this is going to be on behaviors that students are having that might be, you might say that can be disruptive in the classroom. And Dr. Van Acker will be sharing his insights, and he has a tremendous amount of experience. I know that he's worked with our exceptional education ED area, and we think that what he brings to the teachers, maybe in the exceptional education, he also brings that to our teachers in the classroom, because these behaviors are being seen by our teachers, and therefore their ability to interact, their ability to help, their ability to monitor and to work with students, we think is very critical. So he's going to be doing a workshop there. At the elementary school, we have a session that's going to be about language arts articulation, meaning we're going to have all K-5 teachers at Crown Point High School in the auditorium, and then there'll be breakout groups, and they're going to be working on their CKLA, which is the English Language Arts curriculum, and articulating that K through 5. So that's going to be their day. The other couple of things that will be happening that day is there will be time for our teachers to meet as grade level teams at their schools. There will be time for middle school teachers to meet to articulate their curriculums in their courses and classrooms. And then also, as a district, we will continue on with our, I would say that at this point in time, we're still moving forward in an exploration phase of universal design for learning. And when I say that, I mean trying to create an environment in every classroom where every student has access to challenging curriculum. And you'll hear a term from our staff called universal design for learning, and it's taking the concept we kind of think of is the curb cut. You know that when you're going and you're walking or you're strolling your baby carriage, or if you are rolling your groceries up onto a sidewalk, you have these curb cut things that are taking place. Well, in 1976, a curb cut was specifically designed for special education and for those that are handicapped. But since 1976, that curb cut has been extremely important, that has supported many people in their activities and what their needs are. So if you take that as an analogy, the goal is to create curb cuts, universal design in our classroom, so every student has access to whatever the curriculum is, and that it's meaningful and it's challenging to the student. So we'll be working on that across the district on February the 1st at our during our e-learning day. The second thing I wanted to share was we are moving forward on the change from RDS, the Student Information System, to PowerSchool. We have 5 days of initial product training that's going to be starting on February 3rd or 14th, go through March the 14th. And so there's going to be 5 days. So that's going to be initial, where we have 20 people, up to 20 people in every session that's going to be trained in PowerSchool, and they will develop training for the rest of our staff as we get ready to implement PowerSchool as our student information system. This is a big change. We've been with RDS for over 20-some years, and this change in PowerSchool, which we're excited about. There's a lot of things that PowerSchool that will bring to us that we haven't had, and we're excited about that taking place. And so we are moving forward in that implementation. We will be starting to upload information from RDS up into PowerSchool, and that's coming up over the next 5 weeks. We have a date of April 23rd where, in a sense, we'll be ready to go with PowerSchool. Another thing, as far as PowerSchool is concerned, we're going to be transferring 6 years of data from RDS into PowerSchool. And then we also know that there's data that we need to archive to make sure that we have, for instance, transcripts of students' work when they are requested going back a number of years. We have over 20 years of records in RDS, so we'll be working towards that archive also. And then the last thing I wanted to comment on, the Indiana Department of Education has pushed out now what is called their dashboard. And I would encourage you to go and take a look at the dashboard. So if you go to the Indiana Department of Education, and it's right on the front page when you go to the website, it says the dashboard, then you can go to it, you click on that, and there's an overview of what the dashboard is. And up in the top right-hand corner, you'll see schools and districts. And if you click on schools and districts, and then it'll open up a window, put in Crown Point Community Schools, and you'll get the list of schools plus the district, and you can get a picture of where we stand compared to the state. And this is something that the state has been working to push out to make it, I think, to demonstrate to the constituents of Indiana and our communities of how our children are performing. And there's a lot of information that is on that page. So I encourage you, if you get a chance, to go and take a look at that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Reese.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Before Mr. Reese begins, these next two, Mr. Reese and Mr. Akiwa, I've asked them to really provide you all with an update where we are with redistricting and the process we're looking at there. So between the two of them, they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting. They're looking at data, inputting data, taking community discussions with our leaders in Winfield, Cedar Lake, and Crown Point, putting that all together to really kind of give you guys an update tonight. So their portions might be a little bit longer than normal, but that's intentional. We just want to make sure that you guys have information that you may need as we work through this process.
Okay, be ready now, Mr. Gill. I'm sure the number of people viewing online will jump up significantly.
So I want to start off tonight by talking about the demographic report. We've asked Dr. McKibben to update the demographic report. We've used Dr. McKibben since back in 2007. It's been very, very accurate with our projections for our enrollment, a great level of comfort with what he produces for us. I think tonight some people may be surprised with the information I'm going to share with you, but I'm going to lay some groundwork initially from the demographic report, talk a little bit of a history, and then kind of get you what the main bullet points are from the report. I think it's important to know where we were and how we've gotten here and why some of those numbers are the way they are. I know, Ms. Bazin, you asked about growth for this year. We grew by 61 students this year. That's in a population of 8,800, so less than 1%. We did not grow by very much, and we haven't grown by very much over the past few years. Our average over the last few years, is about 60 students. If you look at 3 or 4 years is all we've grown. We did have a dip in the COVID year, so if you mitigate that out, we had a little bit bigger jump in the 21-22 school year. But what's taken place in the district, just to give you an idea, a good example of this, is our graduating class this year for our fall ADM count. Our seniors were at 700 exactly. When they entered into the district back in 2010 and 11, that count was 471. Our growth between when students enter in kindergarten and then when they leave as seniors, this was a little surprising to me. We've averaged over the last 5 years growth of 227 students for that cohort as they move from kindergarten through the senior class. And we'll talk more about this, how this happens. The amazing part to me is in the last 5 years, if you go back to the last 5 graduating classes, the average, this is not an extraordinary number at 229, the average is 227. The variance over that 5-year period is only 22, with the low of 220 and a high of 242. It's been very consistent, the growth in our district from kindergarten through the senior year. And that's going through the ups and downs of the economy through that period, through COVID. These last few classes experienced that. So I thought that was really interesting at how consistent our growth has been from K through the senior class. One of the other things, as you'll notice, though, is when I talk about the senior class that leaves and the kindergarten class that replaces it in the next year. That has not been as consistent. Specifically this year, I'll talk to you, in 21-22, we had 613 kindergarten students. In 22-23, that number was down to 538. The important part about this is this year we lost the most number of students from the senior class to the new incoming kindergarten class coming in. We lost 203 students. So we graduated a class of 741, and we brought in a class of 538. So without even doing anything else, we're down over 200 students. We need to have the growth in all the other grade levels to keep that up. And we did. We grew by 61 students. So that gives you an idea of what we're facing, and that's not a new thing. That average over the last 5 years is 133. It varies widely because we have classes like last year of 741. This year we're only pushing out a class of 700. So as we work through this, though, that number has been growing. For example, in our heavy growth years, the 5-year period where the school district grew the most, and this is between 2003 and 2007-08. That's those 5 years of that school. Our average, when you look at seniors leaving and the new kindergarten class coming in, 47. Now we're averaging 133. And the reason is our kindergarten classes are not growing nearly as fast as the rest of our grades through our district. And there's a reason for that, and we'll get to it in a little bit. But through those years, our average growth for those years was 283 students, which is why now we're only growing the last 5 years, 4 years, on average, 60 students. And it's mainly because that difference between the senior class leaving and the kindergarten class coming in. We have not had the birth rate, and what I'm getting around to here is we have not had the birth rate in the district to maintain the continued growth with kindergarten students. Some reasons for that. Looking at the 2020 census, if you were to take everybody who's in their 20s in the district, 20 through 29, that totals 4,820 people. Now, that's a 10-year gap. If you look at the same 5-year gap for people who are 40 to 44, that number is 4,910. Probably due to the real estate market. The values of homes, specifically back in 03, 04, 05, many new families starting could get homes and afford them in Crown Point. Now that's different. It's difficult to find a home for $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, especially with the new home starts coming in, and be a young family who are having pre-kindergarten students coming into the district. Our birth rate is not keeping up with our replacement rate. Gives you a little bit of feel of what's going on in the district, of why every year we're I'm not losing students, but as those seniors graduate, the new kindergarten class comes in, we're essentially minus about 150 every year we've got to replace. Some years it's more, some years it's less, and there's a significant variance in that group. So, with that being said, the total district projection for enrollment for the next 10 years is in up 141 students. That's not per year, that's total. We anticipate over the next 5 years, the report is anticipating over the next 5 years, we're up 81 students, and then second half of that 10-year period, we're up another 60 students. So total growth in the district of 141. And simply because we're to the point of, we have to have new home starts. We know new home starts are coming, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But we have to have the new home starts because those folks coming in are bringing in grades 1 through 12 into our district. We've seen that over the last 5 years where we've had quite a few new home starts coming in. So that's the important point I want to project is, people think new home starts means we're going to continue to grow and we're not going to have space. That's not the case. The new home starts are what's driving us staying flat. Our growth is not exorbitant. We can handle every new home start that comes in, and we have room for all of them. But we have to be aware of where those new home starts are going. So as we're going through this process, we're looking at where the new home starts are and working with the three entities. Because when you start drawing those lines as far as where the boundaries are going to be for elementary and middle school, you don't want to overload one building that then has a bunch of new home start areas in it, because that's where those students are going to be coming in, specifically grades 1 through 8 as they impact those two, the elementaries and the middle schools. So just to give you some numbers from where the new home starts are and where they're coming from our three entities that feed into us. In the town of Winfield, they're anticipating 1,879 new home starts over the next 10 years. In Cedar Lake, that number's 1,700. And in Crown Point, they're at 2,356 is the expectation, for a total of just under 6,000 new home starts over the next 10 years. Obviously, a lot of that is dependent upon interest rates, how much demand stays in place. The bigger number that really impacts our district and our growth going forward is going to be existing home sales. And I just want you to think of the people who you know in the community who don't have kids in the schools anymore, but still have not moved out of the district. I look at you, Mr. Angel. I'm also falling into that situation, Mr. Q. I know others in the room, Mr. Gianfermi, are in that same situation. Crown Point has become a place where people want to live. So when you get to the point where you're 40 and 50 years old, you're not moving away. Those folks are staying in their home, but they're not being replaced by younger families with kids moving in. We have to have the new home starts to maintain the enrollment we do have at this point. So give you a good estimate of what this looks like. In the 10th year is the first year the forecast calls for us to go over 9,000 students in the district, and we're currently at 8,872. So with the renovations going on, we will have plenty of space as we bring in new students and new home starts. Now, what can change in these forecasts? If interest rates go down again, and now homes become more affordable, people can have the down payments and afford their mortgages, we could see another uptick in some growth. We have room for that because we have quite a few people, as we said, seniors moving out, and then the kindergartens coming in is a significant difference. So I'm excited by what's going on. I'm excited by more people moving in and the new home starts that are taking place. But we're tracking all of that and then trying to use it as we start looking at the boundaries to make sure that we don't have to come back and do this again in 4 or 5 years. I think it's important to note that the last process we went through this was in 2009. So even with all the growth we've had, we've made it 14 years after that redistricting. If we can get 10 years out of a redistricting, you've done really well. As much as our community is changing, and especially with the new home starts going on throughout the community. So that gives you kind of a feel for where the demographic report came in, and then what we're learning from our new home starts and working with both the Winfield, Cedar Lake, and the city of Crown Point.
Before we go with questions for Mr. Reese, let's hear from Mr. Kiwa, and he can give his portion of this as well on what we're looking at, and then from there we can go into further discussion with it.
The official chief, 5.07, Chief Human Resource Officer.
Thank you, Mr. President and board members. Just to add on to what Matt has shared so far, and it's been a great experience to work with Matt, sitting in all these meetings in Winfield and Crown Point and Cedar Lake, to just gather data so we can make, informed decisions based on data. But as far as our current staff goes, in the last 3 to 5 years, we have expanded our staff here in Crown Point in areas, in Crown Point Community School Corporation, in areas that have been in desperate need of bolstering. And unfortunately, we just don't have the room. And I'm not talking about the classroom teacher, right? We're talking about support services. We start talking about inclusion. We start talking about, Heather's area of exceptional learners. The supports that we've added are vital to help our students. But they're social emotional, counselors. We talk about some of these ancillary services, not just speech, but, OT, PT. We don't have room for this currently. We are on top of each other, sharing spaces, in offices, in conference rooms. The exciting thing about, where we're headed into our new facilities is not only were we gonna have room for growth, but we're gonna have good, flexible, learning spaces for all of our learners. And I don't mean just the exceptional learners, but now you're talking about, our high ability students, and just all the supports we provide our families and students K through 12. So, think of that as well when we move into our new buildings. We're going to be taking that into consideration, but it's exciting to see our folks that have been sharing very tight spaces here in all of our buildings to now have some expanded areas to really just let these programs, take root and grow in new facilities. So super exciting for us there. How did I do on that part?
Good.
Okay. And so I guess I'll stop there. I just wanted to make sure we understood that, our new facilities are going to support new learners, but there's a lot of things we're going to be able to do for our current learners with our current staff that we're very limited with right now, that we're going to just be able to unlock this.
I think something that we need to point out here is very important, that over the last 2 years, we've really had a focus on common language, common experiences, common educational programs in all of our buildings. So therefore, a Crown Point education in any one of our elementary schools looks very similar. Same between Taft and Colonel Wheeler, that they look very similar in what is provided for them. So with this, and the work that Sabrina and Mark have been going through has really been crucial and important in what we're doing with this. When you couple that with our response and how we've addressed the exceptional needs audit that was presented, and making sure that we have those different services provided, all of that is fitting into what we're doing here. Also looking at then, for instance, STEM programming, and how do we provide a STEM experience for all of our kids at the elementary level to get them ready for all these robotics experiences and different things that are going on. So when we look at this overall package of what we're doing, not just buildings, not just instructional programs, not just exceptional ed needs, not just new programs that we need, it's all encompassing to bring the vision together to really put us in a place that we're ready to go for the next 10 years to, as we hear, address those needs that are coming with the new starts. I don't know if it surprised any of you. My assumption going into this was that it's all happening in Winfield. It's the boom. But you heard Crown Point has more than what we expect in Winfield. Actually, Winfield was third on the list, correct? Cedar Lake, again, with what they've got going. And again, projections are what they are. It's what happens with the follow-through of it. But it's pretty evenly spread across the district, and making sure that we are ready for whatever comes, knowing that in the meantime, we've got to be ready to address the needs of our kids in all those areas we just discussed. So with that, what questions can we answer for you? And I'm opening it up to the entire cabinet to be able to respond to those questions as well, because they're all very involved with reviewing this information on a weekly basis with Matt and Artie, and getting to the point where we need to be.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Reese for that very thorough background on everything. Besides being extremely surprising for a lot of it, it was so nice to hear all of the research behind it, the why, the explanation on how things are getting replaced and how the classes change throughout. I think that was incredibly insightful and definitely appreciated in terms of understanding the direction, how everything will hash out later. And I love, Mr. Akiwa, thank you for sharing how everything is tied in together, and it's not just about new growth, but about supporting those learners that we currently have. So I love the way everyone has worked together as a team. My only quick question, and I'll only ask because, of course, you know, I have had this question from multiple people. Are we on track in terms of having something to release to the public on when we'll know about redistricting as far as a formal announcement?
Yeah, let me take that one. So actually, we're going to release that information a month earlier than we had planned. So our initial plan was to do that in March. Our plan is now is to bring that to you at the next board meeting, which is February 27th. For a lot of reasons, that will really help us with kindergarten registration. It'll help us with registration across the board, but also scheduling and staffing for the next school year as well. We could get that done and if we waited until March, but we feel like we're in a spot where the information that we've received has been thorough enough that we can really mine through the data to come up with a plan and look at what we need to do. So we, right now, we really feel strongly that we'll be able to bring that to you at the February 27th board meeting.
I too want to say thank you to both you gentlemen. Matt, that was eye-opening, you know, what you said. So if I'm hearing you correctly, to sum it up, Crown Point is almost like a double-edged sword, that parents send their kids here to school because of the great schools, and then they find out they like the city so much, they stay, even after their kids are gone. But I never would have guessed that gap of graduating seniors compared to incoming kindergartners. Very eye-opening. Thank you both so much.
Being that I was around for the 2009 redistricting, what's the company we're using again? I always say his name right.
McKibben?
Dr. McKibben.
Yes, thank you. So I want to make sure it was said right. His formulas, or are you guys going into that a little further today? Oh, based on, but he has his system in place based on all the numbers you shared with us tonight, home growth, continued gap difference and all that, to calculate or to give us the formulas to come up with what's going to be right with the information you've now presented. Is that accurate?
Correct. So what we have, he's given us projections for each elementary if we didn't change boundaries at this point. We're not really using that because we're going to change the boundaries. Specifically, we have to at Jerry Ross and Winfield. So with that, we can, once we determine what our the new boundaries are, we can send those back to him, and he'll provide us what the new projections are based upon those new boundaries.
So also going back to your point, his studies, the last two that he's done, this is the third time we've used him, have been spot on with his projections.
And that's what I was trying to get at, that we're not coming up with a new formula or anything.
No.
It worked for us before, it's worked for us. Why not continue with the same thing that's been beneficial in the past?
Yes.
I'd like to add one thing that I probably didn't mention that I should. It's, you know, in addition to instruction and instructional support, one of the things we're also doing, if you think about, I use the term molting when we talk about things like this, evolving, right, into a new era, a new way of doing things in new places. We're also examining job descriptions. You know, things were teed up a decade ago or more to be done a certain way, and we're starting to reevaluate how we're doing things and who's in charge of what, and can we be more efficient by how we distribute responsibilities. So from an HR standpoint, we're looking at, you know, how do we want to attack this going forward as we get into these new spaces, and maybe that some of that responsibility shifts around and those job descriptions change as well to improve our performance overall, not just in the classroom, but for those supporting the classroom.
Mr. Reese, Mr. Kiwa, I think, just to echo the other board members, the presentation was phenomenal tonight. But I want to be pointed, as a father of 4 children, I think that there's real concern from parents. You know, change makes people nervous. I mean, it just does. That's a natural reaction. And my kid's got to go to a different school, make new friends. Maybe he's going to lose his best friend. And what I'm hearing is that this is ultimately the best thing for not only growth educationally, but also for the district to move forward, that this is a necessary evil of what we're facing with growth, right? I think that there's other schools in Indiana that have major problems. They're shrinking. Their student population is shrinking, right? So in many ways, we're blessed. But My question to you or to anybody in administration is that, did any part play, the individual student, did it play any role in this? Does Brian Smith's son, did you analyze their grades or what they need, and does that factor into this redistricting? Because I know those questions are coming, right? And I understand that as a parent. We're all concerned about our kids and what's best for our kids. Does that individuality play any part into what we're going to be rolling out for redistricting?
I'll answer from from my perspective on what my part of this is, and the answer is no. We understand the caution regarding change, so I want to get it right. We don't want to go through this in 4 or 5 years, because we understand that people get comfortable in the building they're in. They know the principals, they know the teachers. It becomes part of their family and their educational family. We're not here to change it on a regular basis. Like I said, the last time we did this was 14 years ago. We'd love to go another 14 or 15-year run with this, because we understand why that change brings some worry among parents and students. But understand that there's just a time where you have to do it, because we currently have almost a 300 student disparity at our elementaries between the top one and the bottom one. And that's not fair to either one of those environments. We need to get it back to where we have some consistency as far as our enrollments within our, specifically our elementaries.
I would comment, Mr. Smith, that students and the programming and the services are in consideration. As we are redistricting and we're building and we're adding on, I think at the forefront is our service to our children in the school district. No matter where you're at, you're going to receive an education where people care about you.
Jim, is your mic on? Because what you're saying right now is really good.
I don't know if I can say it again. I'll try to repeat it. My comment in regards to the programming, and we're servicing children, and our desire is to have the best opportunity for every child wherever they are at in the school corporation. And at the forefront of everything that we are trying to do, I do believe that children are our main concern. They're the reason why we are all here, and we do what we do, is to provide this kind of service to our children. And I understand that change is difficult, and I understand that to make a move, even in your family, Mr. Smith, that you're talking about, that how it might impact your children. We know it's going to impact some children, and yet at the same time, I just would say that the services that these children are going to, even though they're going to change, they're going to become better, and they're still going to be cared for. Children are going to be, they're going to be loved. They're going to receive what they need. And so I would answer your question that yes, children are at the forefront of everything that we do here.
And I think to kind of wrap up both of the comments that you just heard, that's what is so important about what we've been doing over the work we've been doing for 2 years. Whether it's in the area of exceptional ed, whether it's in the area of elementaries and getting that to be a common experience, whether that is programmatically evaluating what programs we need to have for the future going forward, is making sure that this morning in cabinet, one of our major discussions was, what is the educational experience in every building going to look like? And how similar is that going to be? Are there programs that are going to be in one and not in the other? And the answer, with a few exceptions, was they're going to be identical experiences. And so, Brian, as you talked about, we get the whole, my kid's going to have to go to a different school. I've been through that. People on cabinet have been through that. We're never going to make light of that or say it's just, that's the way it's going to be. We get that there's going to be challenges with it, but we also understand that we're in a much better place to provide a Crown Point education for all of our kids in every building moving forward.
I think that's well answered. I appreciate everyone's comments. One of the things I've always tried to state on multiple occasions as we went through COVID and other circumstances as a board and as a school corporation and with parents is what makes Crown Point unique and why people are drawn to be here and live here is the ability to come together as a community. and not necessarily put oneself first or their own self-interest first, or maybe what's in the home, but the ability to have a bigger picture, to look at the big picture, come together, to see that this change ultimately, maybe not in the short term, it's gonna be hard, but ultimately will be the best for everybody in the long term. And so I just want to encourage parents as you're seeing the impact on the family and the children. You may not be alone. You won't be alone. There'll be other families, there'll be other children that are impacted. But we can pull together, and the school corporation, I think Mr. Hardman said it best, really does care about your child. It may look different, maybe a different school, a different building, but their needs will be met no matter where they're placed. And I just want to make a point, because it's going to feel personal to everybody, and it's not going to help to tear apart there. It's going to help to come together to understand. Let's support our kids as they walk through these changes. Let's support the teachers, the administrators as they go through that. That's where, as a parent, you could really be utilized to actually help the change, not divide. So.
Absolutely, I agree with you, Brian, exactly. Jim, what you said, spot on. And I appreciate you fellas there that this is not an emotional response. You're doing it with data, or in this case, projected data. We're taking emotions out of this seemingly difficult decision. And thank you for that. Thank you for your comments and your answers as well.
I have one more question. Do some of our buildings get Title I funding for the makeup of those buildings? Is there an attempt during redistricting to maintain funding for that, or increase the number of buildings that get funding, or will that be reduced, or has that been considered at all?
We have 3 Title I buildings currently at the elementary level. And in 2009, as we were drawing lines for, I think the middle schools was when we brought Colonel Wheeler on, we were looking at the distribution of students, including your economically disadvantaged students. I do think that as you're looking at the redistricting, you look at all the different populations, as we look at exceptional education, as we look at the programming for economic disadvantaged students. I think it's all part of the numbers, all part of what we're looking at as far as where the lines are going.
Yeah, and the middle schools opened up in 2007, and so there was a redistricting done at that point to split into the 2 middle schools. In 2009, one of the points was to move as few students as possible while still getting back to being rebalanced. And we were able to achieve that, and the middle schools didn't change at all their boundaries. We were able to move around to the elementaries because we still do a feeder system of what buildings elementaries go into middle schools. So we were able to move that. That was a goal within that one, was to move as few students. I think the elementary move was 130 to 140 students, I think, and the middle schools were none. So that was part of that at that point. Just to answer your question, in 2009.
But I would say, as we are looking at what's happening right now, that's a point of information. That's not a point of driving what we're going to do. This is really more about making sure that we're prepared for the future and being where we need to be, rather than that piece of it. So if that were to switch and one building becomes higher than the 3 that are currently identified, so be it.
Good. Item 5.08, Director of Communications, Ms. Allen.
Thank you. Good evening. I want to make sure you know that our next coffee and conversation will be February 9th at 9:30 at the Crown Point Library. And just on a positive note, last week, Timothy Ball Elementary shared some construction photos on their Facebook page. If you haven't seen them yet, you should check it out. It looks like real classrooms, real hallways. There are lockers, there are cabinets. And from my perspective, that is the first thing that we have communicated that looks like a space that people are ready to move into. Every month I do our newsletter, and the past couple of months I've been like, oh, more steel. It's hard to get excited, but this was a really good opportunity to see that, and teachers will be moving into those spaces within the next couple of months.
My goal at one point, Brooke, will be for the communications director to have the longest segment of this part, because you deserve it, based on all the work you've done to communicate to our community what is taking place on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So, thank you. I know you do, so. 5.09, oh, sorry, Mr. Kiwa.
I was just wondering, I did talk a little bit about redistricting, but there were a couple of things I wanted to say in my.
Perfect, yes,
Going
sorry.
back to what Mr. Vassar talked about. So I wanted to make sure that I made some commentary or offered some commentary tonight about what I said, the big four. The big four was, transportation, food service, tech, and buildings and grounds. With Matt here now, we're shifting some of our responsibilities with Mr. Reese here, where Mr. Reese will be working directly with buildings and grounds and food service. I'll stick with technology and transportation, and I think that's going to be good for us. But on that comment, I just want to talk about Marty Freeman, our Director of Transportation, and just what a wonderful addition he's been to our staff, and we certainly appreciate his leadership. I must tell you that, he's made building visits, he's talked to principals, he's gone and examined how buses are moving around on campuses, he's examining our systems, talking about evolving to making sure that we're doing things efficiently and safely, and changing just the overall culture of that department. Going back to what Mr. Vassar opened up with earlier today, we've got some folks that are retired bus drivers that want to return as subs because they're getting the word that, wow, it's a really nifty place in transportation. And I just want to make a little public shout out here for Marty and tell him thanks for all he's done in the short time that he's been here. I also want to have a little bit of a shout out for the girls in my office, Renee Rich and Jean Lang. As we prepare to move to the new building, one of the things we're trying to accomplish before we physically move is just doing a little internal audit on all of our personnel files and things that we need to have in order. This is a really detailed task, talking about literally getting into every file and making sure everything's in order before we move from here to there. So they've been working diligently actually all year, and we're excited to get to a point here at the end of the year where we're really prepared and everything's buttoned up and tight as we get to move from this building to our new location. So just thanks to those individuals.
Thank you. Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Terrell?
So to build off of what Brooke mentioned with our buildings and looking like actual classrooms that people can move into, I think it's important to note that Timothy Ball was supposed to be able to move into those, Dion, I believe it was spring break-ish. And we're moving into those in February, President's Day weekend. And realistically, we could have moved into them sooner, but when you plan on moving into a room or into a wing in spring break, there are systems that have to be ordered to come in that if we could have gotten those sooner, we could have even been in even more quickly. So this weekend, as I was touring sites on Saturday, which I do quite often, it's amazing to see how many people are working over the weekends to get things done that they can't do when other people are there. Dion coordination has just been spot on, so we appreciate Skillman, Dion in particular, and how he's led through that. Mark mentioned the robotics competition that was this weekend. When Brooke and I were at the high school a few months ago, doing one of our super things, the instructor, Matt LeBlanc, mentioned to me that that they were hosting this and said, you should come. So I showed up on Saturday. The field house was packed. It was amazing. The parking lot was packed, the field house was packed. And just to see those kids so excited about what they're doing, how they're doing it, but not only were our kids competing, they were leading the whole thing. Our National Honor Society was there. They helped with setup, they helped with teardown, they helped with running the event. So it's just great to see how one more area is bringing all of our high school students together to celebrate. And, Russ and I, as we were standing there, the principal, Marcinek, I said, there's a little bit different feel in the field house today than there normally is. And he said, yeah, I've got to imagine that this is how our robotics kids feel when they go to a basketball game or a football game. And just to see them getting excited, I saw a parent who actually had like robotic earrings on, hanging. It's really neat to see one more way for our kids to really feel like they're a part of this. 2 weeks ago, Friday, or a week ago this past Friday, our wrestling team wrestled Mount Carmel from Illinois. unbelievable atmosphere. We're ranked in the top 10, I think top 5 nationally. They are ranked in the top 20, maybe top 15. Coming into this big wrestling meet with all these rough, tough wrestlers. And the national anthem, it came time for that, and everybody stood up, and the gym's dark, and the flag is lit up. And one of our exceptional needs students sang the national anthem. And you could have heard a pin drop in that place. And afterwards, the applause was louder than any applause of any match that night. So it's just great to see the way that our community, our kids rally around each other and really supporting all the different parts of what's going on. So last thing, just want to again recognize and a note of appreciation on last week on, I think it was Friday, Dion, that I took the city, the mayor and his staff around Taft, and we're able to show them the progress that we're making there. Dion snuck out of another meeting to be there, and we appreciated his efforts to be there as well. They're posting pictures of the tour on their Facebook page and doing some different things there. But it's just nice that even though Taft isn't necessarily in Crown Point proper, how enthused and excited they are about what's happening here in Crown Point schools, to be able to take time away from their schedules to come out and see the building. So appreciate again the partnership that we have with the city and the relationships that we continue to grow there.
Thank you. Item 6.01, other business of the board. Anybody have anything that we might have not mentioned or need to mention moving forward?
Yes, Mr. Angel, in my role as legislative liaison, just want to make the board aware, Dr. Terrell and I talked about this earlier this morning, but currently in Indiana, it's Senate Bill 305. They're discussing this now downstate, would allow students, or excuse me, allow parents of Hoosier students in kindergarten through 12th grade to opt their children out of regular school enrollment and instead decide on their own how to use the funds the state normally would spend to educate children. So that's the overarching part of it, which is kind of frightening. And as Dr. Terrell and I spoke earlier, that this needs to be monitored closely. You can even imagine the misuse of funds there that could happen. Imagine that. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. Next month, I'll be going down to a State House Day for school board members and expect to have much more information for you at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Vassar.
You're welcome.
One other thing I just want to mention, did we decide, I know I was going to try to be the Winfield rep, being that it's my elected position for the redevelopment. Did we decide who was going to try to be, or were we going to mention the Cedar Lake now that you took over Crown Point?
I don't recall discussing it. So
Okay, well, I wasn't sure. That's why now as me as president, I want to make sure, were either of the new members, Danielle or Tim, available or would like to take that role on? If we can, I'll reach out to them as board president and see where they're at with it, and then we can make a determination. But just want to make sure before I throw somebody's name in the hat, so to speak, that they would be willing to take that on.
to clarify, it's a redevelopment commission for Cedar Lake.
They just put a board member on there as representation. As of right now, still no voting rights. We're hoping at some point in time that gets changed, but as of right now, just don't be aware of what they're doing that might affect the schools. So it's more of a listening role and kind of informational role at this point until something with the state changes.
Brian, how often do they meet?
Once a month.
Once a month.
And sometimes those don't go either. So typically 12 meetings a year, but you might have 10.
Are those meetings in the evening?
They're in the evening, on Monday evenings, second Monday. of each.
Second Monday. Well, Danielle, I don't want to speak for you, but
Things are trickier for me with 4 older kids, so if you want that, but if you aren't able to do that, then I'm happy to help out.
okay, I think I can take that then if that's
Okay.
okay.
All right, I'll try to reach out with them this week and then let you know. Okay? Any other board business at this time?
Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to discuss again, because we still hear some rumbles, and it's not rumbles in a bad way, but just some clarification. I know we talked about Wednesday being an e-learning day. If somebody could just take and speak to e-learning and why this is important from the teachers, administrators again, and what the benefit is from that angle.
And I would just add why we're allowed to do that as well, because that's part of the equation.
The e-learning days, we're trying to protect both the student environment as well as the teacher environment. So from a student environment, the goal of the e-learning day is to help students to have activities that, again, are meaningful, challenging. We don't want to try to introduce new material during that time because they don't have the access to the teaching staff that they would have. But we do want to make sure there's practice, there is opportunities for students to explore. We want to have meaningful kinds of activities for our students while they are at home with the e-learning. When that happens, that allows our teachers to have professional development, have time to articulate, to converse, to collaborate, to plan together so that we can have the best environment for our children. That's what those days are for. When we have district level, for instance, right now as we're working with universal design, this gives an opportunity for the entire district to take some time and take some steps forward together with this. And so it's valuable for our teachers to have that opportunity to articulate. At the same time, we're very conscious, Mark, Heather, Sabrina are very conscious of making sure that our teachers are prepared to deliver a experience for our students via the internet, via materials that are taken home, so that they can continue their growth and development.
Have you seen significant benefit since we've been incorporating these e-learning days, and have the responses from the teachers and the building leaders been positive?
Oh, I would defer here. I don't want to speak for Sabrina and Heather and Mark, but I think overall it's been very much a positive experience.
Yeah, I think to go back to the discussion about this alignment that we are so strongly working to achieve, that without these e-learning days and the ability to group our teachers together, whether that's across the district, within their buildings, it gives them the opportunity to receive professional development, collaboration, which then results in a common curricular experience for our students. So I think it's absolutely essential to us being able to incorporate really our inclusion focus as well as our curricular focus.
Anything to add on that, Ms. Jansen, since you are regular in attendance and representing the union?
The other day at Solon, we were looking at CKLA and the writing components, how it grows from K to 5. We had 40 minutes. We were just getting into the meat of it, and we had to stop. Having a 90-minute chunk or a 2-hour chunk really lets us get. It's beneficial.
Thank you. Didn't mean to put you on the spot, but thank you.
Mr. Angel, may I comment on how we're able to do this? I
Please,
think is
thank you.
the
Yes.
question. As you know, or maybe you don't know, last year the state made some determinations as far as the number of virtual learning days you can have, and they put a number on 3. Okay, so we have taken those 3 days and we've kind of preserved those for those upcoming, maybe I shouldn't say that, for snow days, okay? So that we have those available for us. Because we are a performance qualified district, that means that our performance levels over the last 4 or 5 years have met the state criteria. That means instead of using days to measure our school year, we can use minutes. So the state, 180 days is what a school year is. But when you look at the number of minutes that are required, which is 300 minutes per day at the elementary and 360 minutes at the secondary level, and you compare the length of our school day to that, we have over and above the amount of minimum required minutes. Therefore, we take those excess minutes and then we are able to have these 4 e-learning days. Plus, we've got these 3 days for emergencies if and when they are needed.
Great explanation, Mr. Hardman, because then that covers everything. Benefit of the students, benefit of the teachers, and even for the parents, just in case we end up with some weather days or something like that, so that we don't have to extend the school year.
Correct. Yes.
No other business? We'll move into item 7, board statements of appreciation and recognition. Being that we have 2 board members, I know you've been in meeting and attendance, this is where we can, you don't have to say anything, but say something maybe nice about an event you were at, a person you were at that's involved in the school, even a former student that's maybe even achieved. we don't really have many boundaries, but it's just making sure that we reach out and say something nice about something that might be going on in the community that affected the schools or vice versa. So, Mr. Vassar, anything to add this evening?
Well, I would like to extend thanks to our current bus drivers, in addition to the ones already mentioned that are coming back to sub. It's hard enough driving 60 kids around, but think of like driving 60 kids around with your back to them. Just appreciate bus drivers greatly and appreciate the people who've already retired that want to come back online. And that being said, too, the folks who take care of the buses and make sure they're in good maintenance and they're ready to roll, no pun intended there. Very thankful for them as well.
Thank you. Ms. Mason?
I just wanted to speak a little bit to what is happening in elementary and middle and high schools in terms of programming. Thank you for sharing those things. I have some munchkins who participate in a couple of those programs, so I get to see them firsthand, but I love hearing about the distribution across the buildings and the other things that are taking place. And I loved hearing you share Tyler Hudak's name. He was one of my second graders when I taught, so I feel especially proud to kind of see them as they continue on, and it's really exciting to just see as they continue to achieve different things, and I appreciate you guys sharing those things.
Sorry, Mr. Smith.
That's okay. I just want to congratulate Mr. Vassar and Ms. Basin. Welcome to the board, and well done tonight, and hopefully you enjoyed your experience, your first board meeting. So we have many more coming for you your way. So just want to recognize you too tonight.
Thank you. I'm going to pass along, thanks to all that involved, and I don't want to mention individual names, but I have to mention a few, and that's to Mr. Mulaski, Mr. Kasuris from Skillman, and all those behind the scenes, Artie, Mr. Reese, and all those as far as for the administrative input, because with these building projects going on literally everywhere at our schools, it isn't an easy task to stay on top of them. You got to make sure things are in order and yet still functionable for the educational process. So that isn't accomplished by just one individual, it's a team, and I mean, it's remarkable that, you know, you would think a couple issues, and I don't want to jinx it, so I'll knock on wood and say that things have gone as smoothly as have gone, you know, with even being able to move in early to one of these projects. So everything based on reports is, everything's on pace, and with the shortages of things, you know, nationwide, that's a remarkable accomplishment as well. So we'll hope that stays on pace, but I felt it's very important to acknowledge that because it's something that I think sometimes gets overlooked on, especially with the amount of construction going on in our school corporation. So thank you to all that are involved in that. Motion by Ms. Basin, second by Mr. Vassar. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.